And welcome back, everyone, to the end of the year box office report. Man, I've been using this thumbnail since I made it several years ago. And you know what? I don't think I'll stop. I actually like it. So it's the end of the year. And as I do at the end of the year, I like to tally the box office totals, the wins and the losses, do the math, see who actually made a profit this year, see who's struggling, and basically kind of give us an idea of who's kind of on top at the end of the previous year going into the next year, and basically who's got to step up. Now, as the rules go, I only look at the films that actually came out within the year. So, for example, Moana 2, Wicked, Mufasa, they're all making money into the new year, into this year. But I'm not counting anything they made this year. So you're not getting. Likewise, any film that came out near the end of last year, which I think Wonka did, as an example, I didn't count anything Wonka made in 2024 towards the boxes. Simply only the films that came out this year. Now, you might not like that method. That's fine. That's just the way I do it. And basically, I just do the math. I figure out who made what went wrong, what went right. So let's just get into it. And by the way, my math the math I do should be fine. What they actually made is never probably going to be exactly right, save for a couple, because very rarely do studios actually ever put out, or these filmmaking studios actually put out the marketing budget, which has to be taken into account. So I usually have to kind of figure out the marketing budget on my own. But overall, I think my math should be fine. So coming in by the way, I also only look at the big studios. So Disney, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Sony, Universal, and a couple years back, I included Lionsgate. I think Lionsgate does count now as one of the big studios because they have a couple big franchises on their belt. They have the Hunger Games, John Wick franchise, Expendables, even though that failed like miserable last year. So they do have some big enough franchises under their belt now, and they do usually make enough money that I think I can count them. But you won't see A24, you won't see Neon or Focus or anything like that. So keep that in mind. Anyway, speaking of which, coming in as the lowest grossing and just did the piss poor worst this year is Lionsgate. Lionsgate, in case you are wondering, made a whopping, resounding negative $224 million. I'm going to repeat that because it bears repeating. $324 million. And this is in a year where Craven and Madam Web came out and lost God knows how much. So, the question simply comes down to, what the F happened here? Well, they didn't have a complete meltdown. It's not like every film they brought out this year didn't make money. Some films made a little bit of money. Films like Imaginary or The Strangers Chapter 1. But they made such little money, they only made such a little money because very few people went out to see it, and they were luckily made on very small budgets. We also have some films that didn't lose a lot of money, like Miller's Girl, that one with Jenna Ortega and, the guy who played Watson in Sherlock and Bilbo Baggins. Why am I blanking on his name? Anyway, him. Ordinary Angels, another very mild one, barely made money. Unsung Hero lost $2 million. So those weren't the issues this year. The issues started to come, even like Arthur the King, only lost like $12 million. Okay, fine, not a big deal. It really wasn't until you just started to add up the losses. Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare lost $72 million, which sucks. I really like that movie. Then, Borderlands lost a whopping $123 million when it's all said and done. The Crow lost around almost $15 million. Killer's Game lost around $41 million. Never Let Go lost around $25 million. Now, you might be asking yourself, how does this all add up in the end? Well, I'll tell you there, Jimmy. When you really add it all up, look, it's the 123 and the 72 were already a big loss. That's roughly speaking $195 million. Well, then you get another 90 million added on that between the loss of The Crow with losing 49 and Killer's Game losing 41. And then you do another 25. It stacks up. It stacks up. Hopefully Lionsgate can have a better year this year. I looked briefly at the upcoming year, and maybe I'll do that later on next week for upcoming movies. Because I believe next week I'm seeing Den of Thieves Pantera. But more to the point, maybe Lionsgate will have a better year. Because they got Ballerina from the John Wick world. So they got that coming out. I'm sure they got a couple other things coming out. Maybe they can bring it from behind. But this is not the first year they've had that's been bad. If I remember correctly, last year wasn't that good for me either, because thanks to the debacle with the Expendables 4 and a couple other films. So we'll see what happens. But coming in at number 5, a studio that I always keep an eye on due to their near bankruptcy issue a while back, and who was initially in the number 4 spot until I finally got the numbers on fucking Sonic the Hedgehog 3. I don't know what Box Office Mojo's problem is in like the first couple days of the week, but they don't seem to update Sonic the Hedgehog 3's box office numbers immediately. But Wednesday came, they finally did an update. Maybe it's because of the holidays. Maybe that's what happened. But they did update, and yeah, they were able to surpass Sony. So Sony comes in at number 5. Now, Sony is in a little bit of a different spot here. Sony actually did have a couple strong hits this year. They had Bad Boys, Ride or Die, at making $110 million. Fantastic. Garfield made a nice little profit around at least $66 million when it's all said and done. So that's a fantastic number. In fact, actually, because Garfield was a weird one, because Garfield kept like fluctuating. In fact, I'm going to double check Garfield right now, actually, just to be sure this is where Garfield ultimately ended up, because I want to be 100% certain on this. Let's see. Last year, Garfield. Hold on. Come on. Update. There we go. Garfield, yeah. Where did Garfield ultimately end last year? Garfield ended 230. Okay, I was right. 230. So it still made $234 million. I mean, still gets their cut, but it was made on not a lot. So it made $66 million. Venom still went on to make $117 million. It turned a profit. And it ends with us, made $183 million. Like, I did the math. That was like $500+ worth of profit when it's all said and done. So again, the question must be asked, what the hell happened? Well, there, Jimmy, I'll tell you what happened. We had a little film called The Book of Clarence, which lost $56 million. Yeah, I looked that up. Clarence had a very, very big budget of like had a $40 million budget. It made only $6 million. Madam Web lost nearly $100 million. Ghostbusters lost $65 million. Yet, like I said, you still had you still had Bad Boys. You still had It Ends With Us. You still had Venom making $100+ million. But then you add on losing money from Harold and the Purple Crayon, which was another $40 million. Didn't even make its money back. You lost money with Kraven the Hunter at $134 million. Here, the Tom Hanks film, which was made on apparently a decent little chunk of money, around about $47 million, 67 when you factor marketing, it only made like $14 million. Saturday Night, which I loved, it's on my best of the movie year, list of the year, but it still lost like $30-something million. When you added it up, the losses were over $600 million when it came to Sony versus the gains. And so they actually ended up losing around $94 million this year, which is unfortunate. It is. Just a little bit more unfortunate than our number 4 spot at Paramount, which came in at about minus $91 million. Paramount didn't have a fantastic year this year. They were able to pull a little profit with some films like Bob Marley's One Love, which barely made profit, but still made profit. Mean Girls made a little over, like, around $10 million. Quiet Place 2 made around 58. Smile 2 made around 34. Unfortunately, Smile 2 did not make anywhere near as much as the original did, and it was made on more, which is why its profit wasn't all that great. But then that gets counterbalanced by the Transformers 1, as I spoke about in the Best of Animated Films, losing $34 million. Sonic 3 right now is a loss. Now, as the new year continues, very few new releases are coming out. Sonic 3 is going to turn a profit. That's fine. And in fact, this number, if I were to change the number by the when it comes as things continue, Sonic 3 would bring it into at least a breaking even point, probably. Gladiator 2, though, is another film that is making some money still, but was made just on too much money. It lost right now. It still lost about $70 million. And it made over $400 million, and it lost $70 million. That's not how you do business. Now, Paramount also, I think, has some films coming out this year, some good films coming out this year. Again, we'll probably do a video later, either this week or next, about But as it stands, it was not a good year for the bottom three. Though it was a decent year for, though, Warner Brothers. Why Warner Brothers? Well, I'll tell you. You see, Warner Brothers had a couple really sweet little hits come out. They had Dune 2. They had Godzilla vs. Kong. They had Beetlejuice 2. So that's a lot of good money that you just made there. Absolutely. The problem is, you also had Joker 2 and Furiosa. I don't need to really talk about the others because there was no point in talking about them. They barely made enough money. They actually had a very mild year, Warner Brothers, this year. They had maybe only 7 main releases. And while they were able to turn a profit, $110 million with those movies. Man, did they miss the mark on Furiosa and Joker? That buried them. I mean, buried their asses. They lost $162 million on Joker. That's getting fired money. Furiosa, $152 million. That's getting fired money. Because they misread a lot about those movies. With Furiosa, they misread the fact that Mad Max Fury Road, while it got a lot of buzz, award series and all that, did not actually make a lot of money. And then they're about 8 years too late for the sequel. So it's a niche in a niche in a niche in a niche. You weren't going to make your money back, especially making it on roughly the same amount as last time. And Joker 2, they made the mistake of just making a sequel. And everyone agrees with that. That's not hyperbole. They made a mistake making that sequel. It was supposed to be a standalone, but it made $1 billion, so they saw dollar signs. Let's make another one. So they decided, okay, you have Rain, let's make it a musical. An interesting idea. Could have worked. It failed miserably. And we got what we got. Unfortunately, it's just... Excuse me, I'm also drinking water to keep my throat moist. It's just one of those scenarios where the studio was like half and half of great decisions and their head up their ass decisions this year. It really was. But coming in at number 2 for a studio that really did not make any bad decisions this year. Like, I can't see. They had a lot of wins and really no huge losses this year, save for one. And honestly, I can't blame her for this one. Universal, which comes in number 2 with $677 million worth of profit. Well over $500 million. With such hits as Kung Fu Panda, making over almost $200 million in profit. You have Despicable Me 4 making close to $500 million in profit. You have Wicked currently making about it's now gone up a little bit, but currently at the time, making about $129 million of profit. Plus the little wins, like Wild Robot ultimately made like $88 million profit. Speak No Evil pulled in a small but a fair $17 million of profit. For a small film, great. Honestly, their losses weren't that big. Abigail lost about almost $30 million. Not a big loss. Twisters barely lost any money, like almost broke even, depending what you look at. Really, the only big loss they have, and this is one of those cases where I can't blame them, is Fall Guy. It did lose about $114 million, which sucks. Because that movie's fantastic. And Furiosa is good too, don't get me wrong. But that movie is fantastic. I love Fall Guy. Now, and I've spoken to why I think Fall Guy didn't do well. One, the trailers were good, but I don't know, and they did kind of capture the tone of the movie, I think. But I feel like they just got too many of the trailers too soon and for too long. But beyond that, because I live in the streaming era, it came off, and not just streaming era, but an era of only like a 45-day release window. When a movie had maybe a 60 to 90-day release window, we had to wait a long while. So if you were curious about the movie, you'd go to see the movie and it would make more money that way. Now, if a movie you're interested in is coming out, but you're like, but I mean, do I really want to see it? Oh, it's going to be out in a month? Okay, I got that streaming service. I'll just wait. I think this was the case for Fall Guy. One of those films that if people didn't have a streaming service to see it in about a month, they would not have they would have probably gone out to see it more in theaters. Because it really deserved more love than it got. It really did. It sucks it didn't do as well as it did. But still, Universal had a great year. Fantastic year. And the film studio that had the best year, come on, it's Disney. It's Disney. Now, you may not like that fact, because I know there's some Disney haters out there who want to hate on it, because either they're just not a fan of Disney, or because they think it's cool to hate on it. Whatever. But overall, Disney. You want to know how much Disney made at the end of the year, not even including still making money with Mufasa and Moana 2? They lost about $5 million at First Omen. Disney haters go, yeah! Made about 24 million-ish with Kingdom of Planet of the Apes, which came close to 400 million. It's like, whatever. Whatever. It's not much. Inside Out 2 made, when profit is taken into consideration, all the stats, roughly speaking, around $830 million. Well, I'm sure they lost money on something else. Oh, yeah, that's true. The Bike Riders lost about $46 million. Yeah, take that, Disney! And then Deadpool Wolverine came out, made about $592 million. What? Alien Romulus made about $104 million. Oh, and Moana 2 currently has made about $349 million by the end of the year. The only other loss they had was Mufasa, currently lost about $772 million. And guess what? It's looking like Mufasa may actually turn a profit. This all came out to a total of $1.899 billion. So why? Why did Disney suddenly rebound from the disaster year they had previously? And it was a disaster last year. Between the Marvels, Wish, Haunted Mansion, all of which, by the way, I don't hate. I think I was a bit kinder on Wish than other people, but I acknowledge it wasn't that great. Haunted Mansion deserved a lot better. It did not need to be made $150 million, but it deserved a lot better. It was a fun movie. This should have come out during Halloween. And the Marvels wasn't a bad movie, but again, I can kind of get why it didn't do that well. Coming off of that year, the line, news of my demise has been greatly exaggerated, comes to mind. Yeah, definitely. So, overall, what happened here? Well, Bob Iger came back, so he helped reorganize their film divisions. Marvel said, we're only going to do Deadpool Wolverine. We really need to get our shit in line. And they got their shit in line. They made some beautiful films with Inside Out 2, Moana 2. They delivered. They showed why they're still arguably the best studio around. At least in terms of the movie studios for content, they delivered. And whether you're a Disney supporter, which I would say I am a Disney fan. Do I support everything about Disney? Fuck no. But do I, as a film goer and a film lover, do I love Disney for their films? Abso-freaking-lutely. If you're a Disney hater, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Disney is king of the box office this year. Even if my math is off by maybe 10%, and everyone else made 10% more and they made 10% less, they would still beat the other competition by double. So, easy. almost triple, as a matter of fact. So it's one of those things where, just look at the cold hard facts. Disney came out on top this year, and they deserved it. Honestly, like, the films they made were great quality. They deserved the success they got. So anyway, that is the end of the year box office for 2024. Join us again next year for the end of year box office 2025. Till then, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy, and I'll see you next time.